Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 12th Annual Naples International Film Festival and this special TalkBack Q&A. I'm Shannon Franklin, festival producer. We want to thank our TalkBack Q&A sponsors, Saran and Stan Kraushar. Today, we are very excited to be talking about the narrative feature DRAMARAMA. And with us, we have a very special guest, the writer, producer, and director of the film, Jonathan Wysocki. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Shannon.
Thanks so much for being here. I have to say, as soon as we saw your film, we loved it. We knew we had to have it in the program. We're so thrilled to have you and your film part of the NIFF family now.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you so much for taking time. So I think right out of the gate, as the writer, let's start with the beginning. What had you decide to start to tell this story in this way? What was the genesis of the project for you?
Sure, absolutely. So it started with rereading my high school diary, which was a giant cringe book going all the way through it. And I really, I wanted to capture just my feelings as a teenager growing up in the early 90s, my feelings around being closeted, in that era, and then also how that sort of the outlet for that was drama, and how sort of unique that energy was, and in many ways how my friends and I sort of all kind of used drama to sort of channel our feelings as teenagers. And I felt like I'd never really seen anything quite like that before. And because we grew up conservatively, we also were very, goody two-shoes in terms of who we were as teenagers. Like, we did not get drunk. We were not dating anybody. No one was losing their virginity. And I also felt like I never really saw that in coming-of-age films. Like, it's usually about, a character that really wants to rush into adulthood and wants to sort of do adult things. And the characters that are, late bloomers are usually kind of the butt of the joke. And that was just not my experience and the experience of my friend group. And so I really kind of wanted to write something that sort of celebrated that perspective, rather than just sort of making late bloomers like two-dimensional characters.
Yeah, I have to say, so obviously this interview isn't about me. However, full disclosure, so same time frame, I was in drama club, thespian society, I majored in theater in college, and I can say it so resonated. It was so authentic to that group of people, that time in my life. And I know so many of our audience members, one way or another, were in that world at that time. And I think you're right, I had never seen it quite captured that way, of the camaraderie. And I think a big part of it with the script, I have to ask you about the dialogue, the sharpness, the snappiness, the dialogue, the nostalgia of it. Can you talk about, it's so fantastic. Did you just, was it out of your diary or writing down sentences that you may have put in there? It's so authentic. Can you talk a little bit about that process of getting that on the page?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. I'm so glad that it resonated with you. I feel like there needs to be a film for us theater nerds,
Totally.
Past and present. Yeah, the dialogue, a lot of it did begin, with trying to capture what we sounded like back then. So, like I have some high video of us, goofing off and doing our instant improvs with one another. And so that the language of that was definitely something that I, tried to sort of use to make it authentic. And then I think, the interesting thing about the writing process when you start with something that's coming from reality is that, there's layers of fiction of this as well, obviously, to make these characters into their own beings instead of who they may have been based off in reality. And so they all kind of, draft after draft kind of take on their own voice in a way. And so, some of that dialogue, I think too, was just me, as I found the characters, sort of understanding, okay, how does this person talk and how does this person react to these situations? So it's a pretty complex blend of fact and fiction, I guess, in terms of the dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fantastic piece of writing, that alone, and then
Um,
to translate that right to the screen. So how long did it take you, kind of ballpark, to have your finished script and then to actually start casting, which we got to talk about casting because the cast is incredible.
yeah, I love this cast so much. It was a year. It was a year from when I started the script till I finished, the final polishing of the drafts, which, I guess it's not the first feature that I've written, but it was certainly one of the faster ones in that regard. And yeah, in terms of the casting, I had this amazing team here in Los Angeles, Meg Mormon and Sunday Bowling, and they're both theater people themselves. And so when they read the script, they're like, all right, we got this. We we know what the vibe of these actors needs to be. And they saw hundreds of people here in LA until they found, the cream of the crop. And then I was brought in to the room to watch, basically the best of the best come in. And we found the perfect person for each role. One of the things we couldn't do because we were so low budget is, and that you do a lot in theater, but you can't really do in film much in general, is actually read people together. Mm-hmm. So I never got to see how these people were going to react or interact with each other. And so I had to really, I spent a lot of time just looking at their photos together, just being like, okay, from the limited information of what the 15 minutes we had in the room, this is the vibe I'm getting. And I think that this group is going to work together. And, when they met each other by the third day on set, they had become like the people in the film. And they actually are like the friends in the film now. They see each other all the time and they hang out all the time. And so it's this weird thing where, it started with a real friend group, and then it created this fictional friend group, and now that's created a real friend group, which I love so much.
I love that. That is so cool. And that's, you see them, you feel their friendship on, on the big screen there. And then you're like, you want them to be friends. And then telling us they actually are now is just another layer of awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. How cool is that? I mean, and so like, how long did you have to shoot? I mean, it's independent film, so I'm sure it was probably a fast shoot. Did you all just camp out together and then, get them, acclimated quickly? Like, how was that process?
Yeah, no, it was fast. It was 16 and a half days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very fast. And so, part of the casting process, honestly, was also making sure that everyone had the ability to do drama and comedy, because that's required of all the characters, that they had a range, and that they had, just the like intelligence to be able to work quickly. Like I knew that I couldn't, I did not have the wiggle room to work with someone who may be a little more difficult to work with, or just someone who maybe didn't have the improv skills to be able to interact with one another. And so it really was, so much was really dependent on the casting process, because the shoot was fast. And and the joy of working with that group of actors is that not only did they bring their own, ideas and personality to each role, but because they, were just really skilled actors, they could play off of each other instantaneously, which I think reads on screen in terms of their chemistry. It feels like these people have known each other for a long time, even though they haven't. And so, an advice for any filmmakers that are out there have to deal with a really, really tight schedule is just make sure you cast it well. Like, don't be seduced by someone who may be more famous, that may not be easy to work with on a schedule like that,
That's excellent advice, and that's practical, real world advice. You're right. It's all time is precious. and you need to, at the end of the day, you want an amazing performance by whomever can do it, right? You said improvise, and I always ask anytime we have a writer director, how much play do you allow with, funny play, right, for a film like this, you know, with the language, with, you know, the dialogue itself, but then it also is very at times stylized in a certain, you know, so I'm curious, you know, how that worked on set, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the film is pretty strictly scripted, but I love just the collaborative process of working with actors. As a former actor, I just love actors. And so I always try to create a space on set to encourage improvisation outside of what's on the page so that it feels looser and it feels like, you know, if we're doing 4 takes, that we make every take different and that the actor brings their own, you know, sort of ideas to those takes as well. So that, you know, if they want to try something, there's the space to try that. And I think one of the joys that comes out of that, especially in a script like this that's about actors, is that, you know, some of the lines that are really funny are lines that they came up with themselves. You know, the actress who plays Allie, I think, is a great example of that, in that there's a lot of dry one-liners that she has that were scripted, but then there's a lot that she just came up with in these different takes, you know, where it was like, okay, give me something different on this one. And it was the hilarious thing that landed up in the movie. And so, you know, I again, like, I feel like if you have really talented actors, allowing a bit of freedom on set to bring their own creativity to it is just going to yield even more, you know, I guess, complexity to what you put on the page, because that process just opens up more and more ideas.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as someone who is an actor who has that background, you're more sensitive to what an actor might need. So clearly creating an environment for them to really thrive, you know, it makes sense that you would walk in with that, and what an amazing set it sounds like it was to be involved with. The look and the feel, also such an important part of it. Like, did you just unpack a trunk from your garage? Like, what did you do to create this world? And then you're putting these, you know, I'll call them kids at this point, you know, young adults in the 90s, and for them to really get the vibes. Like, talk a little bit about the production, you know, the production of that, because it was fantastic as well.
Thank you. Oh, thank
Costuming,
you.
yeah.
It's such a great, I'm so glad you asked about that, just because there is a lot of real me on screen. Yeah, I am a hoarder. So there was definitely a lot that was directly from my childhood bedroom, that the production designer and I drove down to my hometown, and not only did we raid, you know, my childhood bedroom, but we cleaned out a lot of my parents' home.
Perfect.
It was like, just so you know, this entire living room is going in this truck. Bye. So yeah, and you know, on top of that, you know, the production designer did an amazing job of supplementing with things that she found around town in thrift stores. And then, you know, a lot of the personal stuff, it's funny, like, not to like compare myself to Alfonso Cuarón, but one of his quotes that I love so much when he's talking about Roma is he had so many things from his own childhood in that film. And, you know, when asked, like, why have, you know, details like that nobody knows about, whether or not they were yours, and he was like, I know, and that knowing that those are my things is what sort of was important to me. And it was kind of the same thing here, where I just wanted my own stuff to add that level of authenticity. And then the costume designer, again, some of that stuff was actually from even my brother's wardrobe as well, is on screen. And then, you know, she was just really talented in finding and creating a lot of those other costumes. And then I had I'll call it assistant, create a really giant PDF of the script with links to every single reference that's in the film, for the actors, so that they knew what everything was referring to, because they were pretty clueless in terms of these references.
That is a great asset to the film production there, because I was thinking, do they, it's a lot of work for them to kind of get up to speed, but it shows now that you say that so clearly that they get the reference, and that's actually very smart. That's very smart.
It was, I knew there would be a lot of questions because there's a lot of references. So like, let me just create a little Bible here of everything that is happening.
I mean, what a fun set. I mean, that just sounds, you brought up, there's so much of your own personal story, your own experience, and obviously, again, it's fictionalized in a lot of ways. But speaking to that, between what you pulled from, what you put in the script, what you, I'm sure, directed in the actors, the different aspects of your life, and then actually even having your own personal things on set, what was that process like for you? I mean, it's a very personal movie. I mean, even with the fictionalization of it, what is that like for you making it and now seeing it and it's making the festival run? I'm curious for you what that experience has been like.
Yeah, it's I had made 2 shorts before this that were based off of personal experiences, and both were difficult to make and difficult to put out there, but rewarding in that they were more successful than some of the shorts I had made that weren't personal. Yeah. Which in some ways was kind of why I made this first feature personal, is that I knew that was actually translating in terms of the product seemed, I guess, authentic. And so I knew that was maybe a route that I needed to go down. And, I guess there's something very awkward though about putting the film out there when there's so much of you on the screen, and having to talk about that as well, and talk about, what was sort of painful to you back then, or what your hopes and dreams were, how naive you were. That stuff it's pretty awkward to actually talk about that stuff in the process. And, I guess like the benefit of it is that it reads as something maybe more authentic to viewers. And I feel like that is maybe a little more rewarding as a viewer to watch something that's so specific. But I do find the process to be more painful than something that is just completely imaginative and doesn't have any of, my own life on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, and it's a very, for your art, it's very, the vulnerability that you put into it, but clearly so that you can make the best art you can and tell the story at this moment that you're trying to tell. And like you said, I mean, it really does resonate. And I think because you've been willing to put so much of yourself in there, and I think the audience, is going to find their way. Some, I'm sure it relates, very closely to their own lives. And even if they have a very, different experience of their life, there's such truth in the storytelling. And you do it so beautifully though, with the undercurrent of serious things, but also the comedy. And I think that's so life. And I think, as you said, certainly for the drama world, so many of us, that's how we got through things and had each other, and the comedy and the drama. and I think you've done a beautiful job with it. And I can see why it's resonating with audiences. And, I immediately thought of the John Hughes-esque, vibe with the twist on it. I know that's coming up a lot. And were those kind of films part of, when you think about this, young adult genre, like that you were influenced by or inspired by, but obviously making it your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love coming of age films, and I think I particularly was gravitating towards the ensemble ones that show sort of the course of young people over a specific period of time. Obviously, things like The Breakfast Club or American Beauty, or American Graffiti rather, are particular because it's like a contained one 24-hour or less experience for these characters, which I find that sort of microscope really interesting, because it feels a little bit like theater, in terms of the real timeness of it. And I love that those films can really dig deeply into their characters, because you're kind of sharing this very short moment of time as they transition from, you know, one 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 sort of realm to the next realm together. So yeah, I definitely love those kind of films.
Do you, you know, obviously again, there's a lot of personal stuff in here and you're pulling from, but like, where do you see these characters, you know, when we come to the end of the film? What do you imagine for them beyond what actually any piece that's real for you? Like, what do you imagine for these characters? Because they're what a incredible life in different directions. So curious how you see that.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I don't have clear answers. Like,
That's
I've
okay.
been asked, they're like, is there going to be a sequel to watch what happens to these characters? And you know, I certainly love that they feel rich enough that they live beyond the last moments that you see them in the film. Um, and you know, I guess I can't say what I think is going to happen to all of them. I have like some ideas, but you know, I think what's sort of interesting is that the characters who end the film still kind of scared about the future are obviously going to have bigger growing experiences in college than the ones that feel a little more like they're ready for change and they're ready for that next step. And so, you know, I would say looking into the future, the ones who are a little more afraid about the future are definitely going to have much larger changes when we meet them after college.
Right. No, I get that. And a sequel would be great. I totally could see this as a TV show. I'm just saying, you know, I'm just, you know, just let me know because I'm in.
I love
Um,
that.
so, I mean, yeah, it's such a fantastic film. And so what is next for the film and for you? What else is going on in, yes, I know a very strange world we're in right now, but tell us what else is going on and what's next.
Yeah, the film is going to keep making the festival circuit this fall, going, you know, sort of state by state, and we're talking to distributors. So there'll be some kind of a wide release in 2021. I don't know what the details of that will be yet, but we're definitely working on it. So, you know, if you're a fan of this film, make sure to keep track of it so that you can tell other people when it goes in a wider release. And then I have, you know, a couple of other indie projects that I hope to make my second feature. So, so yeah, we'll see what 2021 brings us. I feel like the entire country is putting a lot of hope and dreams into 2021, and I am also on that train of, like, you know, putting a lot of hopes into that year. So we'll see.
I know, I get that, and we're all in this together, and we will get there. And you will keep us posted because our audience is going to want to know what's next for the film and for you, and we'll make sure that we keep track of that. But I just want to say, you know, on behalf of the festival and all of us here, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and having the film in our program, and we're just so thrilled. It's been just incredible talking to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to Naples, and I'm very proud to be a part of the lineup. So thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And I do want to thank our audience as well for their ongoing support of Artist Naples and the Naples International Film Festival. Thanks so much. See you next time.